Hello and welcome to another AIC video. I have my Lenovo ThinkPad X13 Gen 1 here, and I've been working on a video for it. And one of the things I've been wanting to do is install Linux and force myself to use Linux as my only OS for a month. Kind of like I did with my ZBook 14 Gen 2 with its fifth gen Core i7 processor, just to really get a good feel of that experience. And so I popped on the interwebs and I went to my favorite subreddit and asked which version of Linux I should run. And I got a handful of results. And then I went on to Google and asked there what I should use and got a much bigger list of options. And so then I went to X and then I logged out of X because I wasn't prepared for that amount of hate. See, I really dislike Windows 11. It is a steaming pile of garbage, honestly. And I really want anything to come and take over Windows as a leading operating system, or at least take enough market share to force Microsoft to change the way it is currently doing things. I'm old, but I grew up with a computer in my house, an original IBM PC running DOS that my parents bought the year I was born. A family owning a computer was something that was incredibly rare until I was well into my teens in the mid-90s. I've run in every version of Windows outside of ME since Windows 3.11 for workgroups, and I've owned a dozen or so Apple devices. I do work as an infrastructure engineer in my day job, and I'm in and out of Windows Server and Linux machines of every variety every day. I have a pretty broad experience with a multitude of operating systems, and I'm not really shy about what I'm using. I can get around even unfamiliar ones without too much problem. And yet I'm struggling to bring myself to use Linux on a laptop as a daily OS. And the reasons I am struggling are the reasons I doubt that it will ever become mainstream unless something massively changes. Because Windows 11 is so bad, I think that it is going to be a problem for a lot of computer manufacturers in the near future. In a way, I think it's very similar to what killed other products like Palm's WebOS, Nokia, Symbian, and Windows mobile phones. Now, the following is my own personal opinions, and you'll probably disagree with me on a lot of them because my audience is pretty tech savvy. I'm trying to come at this at the point of view of a typical tech consumer, someone who just needs their computer to work, be reliable, and make sense. Now, there are a lot of benefits with Linux. Linux is and can be very lightweight, still supports much older hardware, and you can really breathe new life into a machine that is no longer supported by Windows. You can run lower spec hardware, less RAM, and have a pretty good experience with it, especially at this time when RAM and SSDs are so expensive. You don't have to upgrade it just to do basic tasks. Linux is very secure. With a lot of security built in, you run very little risk of getting viruses or malware on your Linux machine. I'm not saying it isn't possible, it's just harder. Linux is not full of adware, tracking programs, and AI crap, especially compared to the Windows of today. You are not the product when you're using Linux. Linux is cheap in that the software is often free, and there are a lot of programs that you pay for with Windows that have an open source and free equivalent in Linux. Linux is also highly customizable. You can really set things up just how you want it. So if you have a very specific workflow, you can really optimize your experience. However, there are a lot of issues with Linux. The customizable bit that I just mentioned, it's also, in a lot of ways, a huge detractor because it's rare that you see two machines that are similarly set up, much less the same. So when you hop from machine to machine, you basically have to completely relearn the OS. It also means that things aren't always in the same place you would expect them to be. And you kind of have to spend a lot of time when you set up your machine to kind of figure out where the settings and things are that you're going to be needing. Drivers and support. There are a few machines that have really good support with Linux, with a lot of drivers available. ThinkPads often fit into that category because there is a huge group of users who are able and willing to invest the time into the project to get things working correctly. But if you stray from that group of devices that have that broad user base, then you're going to find support and documentation lacking. And if you need to do anything remotely advanced, you're going to have to do a ton of research and dig through page after page of useless search results before you find an answer, if you find an answer. And are you going to be able to call a support line or chat with a support tech for help? No. Now, I know there are some options where you can get support, but that's paid support. And if you're paying for support, you might as well be paying for Windows. There are also too many options. I know this sounds like it should be a benefit, but to the average user, the sheer variety of options is overwhelming. Just take Linux Mint, for example. There are 3 different flavors of the current version: Cinnamon, XFCE, and Mate. And that's just one version of Linux. How is somebody who is not technical supposed to know which one to choose? There are literally hundreds of actively maintained Linux distros, with many having more than one version with different user interfaces and configurations and support. It's a massive list of options. Community attitude towards new people or outsiders can be pretty negative. Join any Linux forum and ask a basic question and see how quickly you get ripped to shreds. Do not expect to have people willing to handhold you or help you much at all. They expect you to be fairly technical when you are using Linux, and I think that's a mistake because especially today there are a ton of people wanting to move over. Now, are there helpful people? Absolutely, but you will often find negativity before you find those who are willing and able to help. There's also too much requirement for console. While I agree it is best that people really understand their systems and how their computer works, my 70-year-old grandmother does not need to be digging into console, typing lines of code, praying that her new printer works. It needs to just be something that is for advanced things, just like the command line is in Windows. App support is a big one. I know this is slowly getting better and there are workarounds, but it is not as intuitive as it should be. Often comes at a pretty big performance hit and is not really ready for the masses. I know that Wine recently came out with new code to run significantly faster. I haven't experienced it yet personally because, again, I haven't installed the version of Linux I want to run. But hopefully this does become less of an issue down the road. But at this point, it is a problem. And there are few options for having Linux installed from factory, especially on consumer-focused systems. There are some business class laptops like these ThinkPads can be had with a version of Linux, but you have to go out of your way to buy them. You can't just go into Walmart or Best Buy or Costco and see a laptop and buy it with Linux ready to go with minimal user setup. Linux has a strong focus for the enthusiast, not the mainstream consumer. Now, I could probably go on quite a bit longer about reasons why I don't think Linux will be mass adopted. And I think it's a shame. I think it's really a missed opportunity. Windows 11 is a bad operating system. It's resource hungry, has questionable security, is full of spyware where they take your data and sell it to third parties. It's pretty unstable with updates that have bricked people's machines more than once with major updates. Not to mention all the older hardware that has been deemed not usable that would otherwise be perfectly reasonable to use outside of Microsoft's arbitrary requirements. A lot of normal users are pretty sick of Windows and want to move away to something else. I've talked with quite a few people who've asked my professional opinion on the matter. Many who are slightly above normal on their techiness have even tried Linux or at least started poking around before they got too overwhelmed with options. Many have moved to Apple devices, especially with the new Neo launch. Though Apple's macOS is not so hot either. It's less of a mess right now compared to Windows, but is languished and on the vine a bit too long. There are a lot of features it is missing, and a lot of clunkiness. It's almost like they've tried to make it more like iOS without giving people a touchscreen. I use my MacBook Air almost daily, but there are things about the OS I just find frustrating and cannot commit fully to a macOS device. That being said, Apple has done something awesome, specifically with the Neo, that is going to stir up a lot of trouble for Windows laptops. And I hope, but also doubt, that those manufacturers will take advantage of what Apple is doing. One being price plus performance plus build quality with a stable, user-friendly operating system. It's a solid machine that feels far more premium than its price would lead you to believe. It's also very targeted at the education system to replace their current Chromebooks and cheap Windows laptops. Being fully integrated, they have delivered a package that is reliable, stable, without headaches, and the feeling of being spied on by Microsoft. What do I think needs to happen to push Linux into the mainstream? We need just one manufacturer to pick a single distro and to invest into it. Keep it open source, but provide model specific ISOs that have all the package drivers for specific systems. They need to have it be tiered with a cheap, middle range, and premium system line, but the experience with them needs to be consistent with the OS. Push it towards schools, push it for parents getting their kids' school laptops, push for companies with easy tools to integrate into AD and VPN services, both of which can be a headache to get working on with Linux, and often require some deeper knowledge, and again, console. Going back to the phones I talked about above, one of the major problems with all of them was app support. There was just too much variety in devices, with lower adoption rates per device. So developers wouldn't develop apps for them, and so the adoption stayed low. Apple, on the other hand, had one device, and it wasn't very good at first. In fact, the original iPhone was kind of terrible, but they had one device, and it was easy to justify developing apps for it with a larger user base. And so with more apps, the more people bought it, and it snowballed. Apple also had the ecosystem. Again, this took a while to catch up with what we see today, but people could see it there, and it made sense. People, normal everyday people, need to pick up a Linux machine and not feel like they are picking up something foreign and alien. They need to be able to look at it and understand it. It needs to be simple. And the console needs to be something that only the most technical need to bring up, and everything else just needs to make sense. Even if it sacrifices some of the customization, because standardization breeds familiarity, and familiarity equals comfort. People need to be comfortable with Linux. So we need anybody. Pick a Linux distro, develop it to work with all your machines, but make it official for a specific line. Make it easy for grandma and preteen alike. Market it towards the educational and professional environments. Invest in the means to make it easy to manage for system administrators. Put some investment into support for specific software like VPN clients. The one my work uses for me does not work on any Linux machine. I doubt it will happen due to contracts manufacturers have with Microsoft, but we need one champion to open the floodgates, and then we can break free of the Microsoft stranglehold. I think the company that does it will be competing with Apple and Microsoft for market share very quickly. And I think the time is right for people to abandon Windows. Apple is absolutely taking advantage of it. But will any other manufacturer? Thanks for watching, and I hope you have an amazing day. Now, let me go ahead and install Arch on my X13 or maybe Mint. Debian, that's one that's recommended a lot. I've used MX Linux before and really liked it. Pretty familiar with Ubuntu. I use that at work quite a bit. I've heard good things about Zorin. Do you know what? Dang it. I'm just going to install Haiku.